Toe drag release. Toe drag release. Toe drag release. Toe drag release. That's it, Bessie.
Alright, now we get to see who gets the honor of drafting Connor Bedard and winning the 2023 NHL Draft Lottery. So I have the NHL Draft Lottery simulator to see who will select Connor Bedard with the first overall pick. And the Chicago Blackhawks win the NHL Draft Lottery and will have the chance to select Connor Bedard first overall. And with no surprise, Connor Bedard is selected first overall by the Chicago Blackhawks. Heading into his rookie year, Connor Bedard is an 85 overall, and he's going to be on the first line with Patrick Kane and Taylor Radish. Wait, Patrick Kane is a 94 overall? If I haven't mentioned already, I will be turning injuries off just to make sure Connor Bedard will play as many games as possible to pass Wayne Gretzky as the most goals in NHL history. Chicago would somehow sneak into the playoffs, finishing 5th in the Central. Meanwhile, Bedard had a very good rookie season, scoring 33 goals and 85 points, which would lead all rookie skaters by 20 points. The Chicago Blackhawks would actually make the third round, but they lose to the Anaheim Ducks in 5 games. So you're telling me Anaheim and Chicago next season will both make the Western Conference Finals? That is not even the worst thing that happened in this playoff run. The Toronto Maple Leafs somehow win the Stanley Cup, beating the Anaheim Ducks in 5 games. Yes, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they made it out of round 1 and they won the Stanley Cup. Shout out Bedard having a great playoff run for a rookie. 16 points, 16 games, not bad. Shout out Connor Bedard winning the Calder Trophy. Shout out Austin Matthews taking home the Conn Smythe Trophy. Heading into Season 2, Connor Bedard is an 89 overall. The Blackhawks would end up finishing 2nd in the Central with a 46, 31, and 5 record. Bedard puts up another great season, scoring 36 goals and 88 points. Shout out cover boy Trevor Zegras putting up 111 points. EA Sports is absolutely loving this right now. The Blackhawks lose in the second round to the Colorado Avalanche in 5 games. And Tampa goes on to continue their dominance with another Stanley Cup, getting their revenge, beating the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games. And somehow Matt Zuccarello takes home the Conn Smythe Trophy for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I gotta be honest, I have no idea how this happened. Season 3, Connor Bedard is bumped up now to a 93 overall. The Blackhawks end up finishing 1st in the Central with a 47, 29, and 6 record. And Connor Bedard would have an absolutely monster season, scoring 56 goals and 114 points. We would end up losing in the first round to the Vancouver Canucks. Yes, the Vancouver Canucks. Calgary goes on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Philadelphia Flyers in 5 games. Shout out Connor Bedard having an absolute clean sweep on the individual awards. Bedard would win the Hart, the Art Ross, the Maurice Richard, and the Ted Lindsay. Coming out of his entry-level contract, Bedard has re-signed with the Blackhawks for 7 more years at $9.3 million. That is an absolute steal, in my opinion. The Blackhawks would finish 2nd in the Central. Bedard would put up 48 goals and 100 points. Shout out Nikita Kucherov. Edmonton would end up beating us in 7 games in the second round. And the San Jose Sharks would sweep the Buffalo Sabres in the Stanley Cup Finals. Shout out Bedard picking up the Lady Byng. At the end of year 5, the Chicago Blackhawks would finish 3rd in the Central. Connor Bedard would take a step back this season, only scoring 34 goals and 87 points. Shout out McKinnon and Barkov, who are absolutely dominating right now. Chicago would end up losing in the first round to the Winnipeg Jets. And Tampa would go on to win another Stanley Cup. Now that's 4 Stanley Cups in the Stamkos era. Shout out Nikita Kucherov taking home the Conn Smythe Trophy. Going into year 6, Connor Bedard is now dropped down to a 92 overall. The Blackhawks would end up finishing 3rd in the Central. Bedard would have an absolute breakout season, scoring 63 goals and 138 points. Shout out Nathan McKinnon, who continues to absolutely dominate. And we would end up losing in the second round to the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games. And the Tampa Bay Lightning continue to absolutely shit on the entire league, winning another Stanley Cup, this time beating the Anaheim Ducks in 7 games. Shout out Tampa going back-to-back yet again. Shout out Bedard having an amazing year. Heading into year 7, Connor Bedard is a 93 overall. Chicago would end up finishing 3rd in the Central. Bedard would have an amazing year, scoring 61 goals and 115 points. Shout out Crosby at age 42, putting up 61 goals and 120 points. That is tied for the best season of his career, but with the goal totals, I'd say it's probably his best season ever. This sim engine is absolutely wild. It makes for some pretty interesting outcomes, to say the least. And Chicago would get swept in round number 1 to the Colorado Avalanche. And the Stanley Cup is staying in the state of Florida, but this time the Florida Panthers Panthers will win the Stanley Cup. Shout out Sam Reinhart taking home the Conn Smythe Trophy. Heading into year 8, Connor Bedard is a 93 overall. The Chicago Blackhawks would finish 5th in the Central, missing the playoffs with a 34, 38, and 10 record. Connor Bedard would put up 44 goals and 119 points. The Colorado Avalanche would end up beating the Montreal Canadiens in 7 games to win the Stanley Cup. Shout out Connor Bedard winning the Selke Trophy. And shout out Nathan MacKinnon winning the Conn Smythe. Heading into year 9, Connor Bedard is a 93 overall, and holy shit is this team hot ass. And the Chicago Blackhawks are back to being absolutely terrible. Connor Bedard had 60 goals and 106 points. The Seattle Kraken would go on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games. Wait a minute, Tampa made another Stanley Cup Finals? Shout out to Shane Wright winning the Conn Smythe Trophy. Shout out Bedsy taking home the Maurice Richard.
That's it, Bessie. Toe drag release.
Going into year 10, Connor Bedard is a 93 overall. The current record Connor Bedard must beat is Alex Ovechkin with 957 goals. So not only did Alex Ovechkin pass Wayne Gretzky, but also Sidney Crosby at 895 goals. Yet again, the Chicago Blackhawks are absolutely ass. Despite missing the playoffs, Connor Bedard would have a monster year, putting up 69 goals, nice, and 140 points. Shout out Cale Makar putting up 107 points as a defenseman. The San Jose Sharks would go on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Ottawa Senators in 7 games. Shout out Cale Makar back-to-back Norris trophies. Shout out Bedard picking up another Lady Byng. Your Conn Smythe winner was Mikko Rantanen. After re-signing in the offseason, Connor Bedard is back, making $16 million, and he's currently a 93 overall. The Blackhawks are still terrible as they finish 7th in the Central. Connor Bedard would have 51 goals and 105 points. The LA Kings would end up winning the Stanley Cup, beating the New Jersey Devils in 6 games. Shout out Connor Bedard on his 3rd straight Maurice Richard Trophy. Going into year 12, Connor Bedard is a 93 overall, and he currently sits at 555 goals. Hey, and his playoff stats are not looking too terrible either. 83 points in 68 games, 30 goals, not bad. And the Chicago Blackhawks still suck. Bedard would have 53 goals and 130 points. An amazing individual year for him. Shout out Nolan Patrick on the Edmonton Oilers putting up 107 points. The St. Louis Blues would end up winning the Stanley Cup, beating the Pittsburgh Penguins in 4 games. Jordan Kyrou wins the Conn Smythe. Bedard would not win his 4th straight Maurice Richard Trophy, as some Booma guy won it. The auto-generated names for these players are crazy. Going into year 13, Connor Bedard is still a 93 overall. The Chicago Blackhawks would end up finishing 3rd in the Central, finally making the playoffs. Connor Bedard would have 57 goals and 118 points. Shout out Austin Matthews at age 38, putting up 49 goals and 91 points. And the Dallas Stars would win the Stanley Cup, sweeping the... Wait a minute. Did Pittsburgh get swept in the Stanley Cup Finals for a 2nd year in a row? Anyways, Dallas Stars would win the Stanley Cup. Shout out Connor Bedard on his back-to-back Selke trophies. Going into year 14, Connor Bedard is, of course, a 93 overall. It looks like he's going to cap out at 93. That is going to be his absolute limit. I don't understand. He's putting up over 100 points every single year, but he can't move up to a 94 or a 95. Would you look at that? The Chicago Blackhawks are back to being absolutely terrible. Connor Bedard would put up 49 goals and 122 points, but I honestly could not give a flying fuck about the points. I'm here for the goals. I want him to break this record as soon as possible. He's currently at 714 goals, so he's getting closer. The record is still currently held by Alex Ovechkin with 957 goals. So we have some good news. The Pittsburgh Penguins would not get swept in the Stanley Cup Finals for a 3rd year in a row, but instead they would get swept in the 1st round. You literally cannot make this shit up. Anyways, Columbus would win the Stanley Cup, beating the Anaheim Ducks in 7 games. As we head into year 15, Connor Bedard is, of course, still a 93 overall. Not much has changed with Connor or the team. The team is still fucking terrible. It's a little better than past years, but still, I still don't see them making the playoffs, to be honest with you. Well, the Chicago Blackhawks have proved me wrong. They finished 3rd in the Central, making the playoffs with a 49, 27, and 6 record. I gotta be honest, I did not see that one coming. But what I did see coming, pause.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
is Connor Bedard, putting up 56 goals and 128 points. He is an absolute monster. Shout out Shane Wright, putting up 109 points. Chicago would lose in the first round to the Nashville Predators, and New Jersey would go on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Predators in 6 games. Heading into year 16, Connor Bedard has somehow dropped down to a 92 overall. The Chicago Blackhawks would just miss the playoffs, finishing 4th in the Central. Bedard would have 45 goals and 89 points. The Columbus Blue Jackets would go on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Dallas Stars in 5 games. Going into year 17, Connor Bedard is a 91 overall. He currently sits at 815 goals. The Chicago Blackhawks actually did not do too bad. They finished 3rd in the Central. Connor Bedard would have a bounce-back season, putting up 50 goals. Chicago would yet again lose in the first round, this time to the Nashville Predators. And Dallas would go on to win the Stanley Cup, beating the Columbus Blue Jackets in 6 games. Heading into year 18, Connor Bedard is a 90 overall. And holy shit, is that Johnny Gaudreau? Sadly, it's not Johnny Gaudreau, it's Jaquise Gaudreau. Jesus Christ, DA. The Chicago Blackhawks would miss the playoffs, finishing 6th in the Central. Connor Bedard would put up 106 points, but only 39 goals. The San Jose Sharks would go on to win the Stanley Cup. Connor Bedard is heading into year 19, and he's currently a 89 overall. Bedard currently sits 3rd on the all-time goals list with 903. Connor Bedard currently sits 2 goals away from tying Alex Ovechkin for the most goals in NHL history. He needs 2 goals to tie and 3 to pass. Will he do it against the LA Kings?
Point. Fires it. He scores. That's 3 on the road. I can't imagine too many hats being tossed, though, here.
No, there's not going to be. I mean, this is a terrific game for him. He's got 3, and you're right, on the road, nobody's throwing their bucket.
And in typical EA Sports fashion, there is no cutscene for passing Alex Ovechkin for the most goals in NHL history. EA Sports, it's not actually in the game unless it makes us money. Shout out Hockey Ultimate Team. Since EA Sports does not have a cutscene for Connor Bedard being the all-time leading goal scorer, I decided to simulate until he hit 1,000 goals. He is currently 3 away.
Off the trot. Look at that move. He scores! He did it! He did it!
Are you kidding me? That's 1,000 goals in his career. This is a sweet goal here, James. I mean, the whole play, though, is getting around the defender. A little stick handling move, shake and bake. It's into the open ice, and it's in the net.